Thank God it's
Welcome back to the Friday Show, presented by the Match Series, which resumes June 1st at Penn National on Penn Mile Day. I'm Scott Jagow, along with Ray Paulick. We're so glad to have you with us. Ray, let's start with the Preakness Stakes last weekend. War of Will got something of redemption, I guess, if you want to look at it that way, from being impeded in the Kentucky Derby by Maximum Security. What was your big takeaway from the second leg of the Triple Crown?
Said Maxim's that War of Will is a really good horse. In watching the Kentucky Derby, I didn't have War of Will on any of my tickets. I just kind of thought, what happened to him in the Louisiana Derby, a little setback behind. I thought, you can't have setbacks on the road to the Kentucky Derby, so I threw him out. But going down the backstretch and into the far turn, I saw him just breezing along behind Maximum Security, and I said, this horse is going to be tough. When the incident happened, there have been estimates by someone like Andy Beyer saying it only cost him a length. After watching the Preakness, I'm not so sure. I think the Kentucky Derby would have been a lot more competitive down the stretch if we didn't have that incident at the 5/16 pole.
Well, I went into the Kentucky Derby with the opposite opinion of yours, which is I liked War of Will after they shifted the gate positions because of the defection of Omaha Beach. That gave him a little bit more room, so I figured he was going to run a big race. So I was not surprised that he won the Preakness. And I don't think you can look at it in terms of the lawsuit or the result of the Kentucky Derby, the DQ, too much because, first of all, with the lawsuit, it's about the process during the appeal. So that's what they're going to be looking at. I really don't think they're going to take this into account, the fact that War of Will won the Preakness. But it does, I think, affect the big picture of the 3-year-old crop. And now you have to elevate War of Will right there with Maximum Security. And Gary West, the owner of the DQ'd horse, is offering this challenge to the horses that were impeded in the Derby, $5 million each, you put it up. And I actually don't have a problem with this idea. I kind of like the idea of side bets in horse racing. So I'm on board with the concept. I'm just not on board with the sour grapes feel of it, number one. Number two, where are you? You're waiting till the Haskell. You're putting your horse, at Monmouth Park to train over that track for the whole summer, and then you're going to have, an advantage because it's a speed favoring race traditionally. Why don't you show up in the Belmont, man?
Yeah, there's been no specific reason. The Monday after the Kentucky Derby, Gary West went on the Today Show and said, well, we're not going to run in the Preakness because there's no Triple Crown on the line. And now they're not going to run in the Belmont. And the horse is back in training. They're just saying, we just don't think it's that big of a deal. We'll stay in our backyard right here at Monmouth Park. We'll train up to I guess there's a prep race, the Pegasus, and then they'll use that as a springboard to the Haskell, using his home field advantage on that speed favoring racetrack. The Belmont is a classic. It's we only have 3. And, he skipped the Preakness for whatever reason. And to skip the Belmont is a little bit of a slap in the face to tradition and to the fans.
If War of Will wins the Belmont Stakes, I don't care what anybody says. He's number 1 on this crop. And we'll see what happens in the Haskell, but I would still say, even if Maximum Security wins that race, if War of Will has won 2 of the 3 Triple Crown races, he has to be at the top of the crop. The other thing that's really ridiculous about this challenge is the fact that his horse was 9-2 in the Kentucky Derby, right? What was War of Will? 16-1? Long Range Toddy was what? 55-1? Country House 65-1?
Yeah.
Bodie Express 70-1? Come on, if you're going to make this challenge, you have to create a point spread. You are the favorite, a heavy favorite, considering the Derby odds. So this is just totally ridiculous.
I know, any gambler in Vegas would look at that. And Gary West is a gambler. He participates in a lot of handicapping tournaments. And he knows that the deck is stacked in his favor with that kind of a bet. I mean, anybody can read the odds. So, sure, why not? Why not throw out that challenge?
Yeah, again, the concept of it, I'm kind of like intrigued by this going forward. Let's have more owners do this, challenge each other, but you got to make it a level playing field. This one is not, and especially I'm really not pleased with the fact that he's deciding to skip the Belmont and is putting all of he's saying any race, next time, wherever, whenever. Well, there's a race coming up on June 8th at Belmont Park. That's the one you should be targeting because there will be some of these other 3-year-olds in the race. Then you can show how great your horse is.
Speaking of June 8th, I don't know about you, but I really look forward to Belmont Stakes Day every year. And I actually look forward to it more this year because there's no Triple Crown on the line, which means it's going to be a fantastic day of racing, top to bottom, without having to, stumble across all the tourists that come out on a Triple Crown day when it is on the line, like last year, that do nothing except get in the way. They're just there to be part of history, and I would rather go to Belmont on a big day of racing when it's full of racing fans, not a bunch of tourists. So I can't wait for Belmont Stakes Day, from the Met Mile to the Woody Stevens to the Just a Game. It's a fantastic day of racing.
I agree. Mostly, I mean, I do love the day when there's a Triple Crown on the line, the electricity in the air, the American Pharoah. It was so energetic, 110,000 screaming fans. There's nothing like that. I can use a couple of years off, though.
Yeah, let's wait about 37
with respect to the crowds. With respect to the crowds, but in terms of racing, absolutely, this is one of the best days of the year. Best weekends of the year for high quality racing. It's almost like a mini Breeders' Cup. And I can tell you one thing that's going to happen. Bob Baffert will be winning races on this card because he's done it the last couple of years. His record on Belmont Stakes Day in Grade 1s is ridiculous the last couple of years. And he's loaded for bear again. He didn't do so well in the Kentucky Derby or Preakness by his standards. So watch out for Bob Baffert. We have a poll question about the Gary West Challenge. Should the owners of those other horses take him up on it? Share your thoughts at PaulickReport.com. Well, the way this year has gone, Ray, you knew we would get some more negative media attention. And of course, HBO's Real Sports provided that this week with a 20-minute piece in which they showed 18 different breakdowns on the racetrack. They dredged up the worst ones they could find. And of course, they went back at least a decade for some of them. And then they showed a horse being slaughtered, which was in 2008, and provided very little context around what's happened since then. So I found the piece to be something of a hit job, not that racing hasn't put itself in a position to be hit. But in California this week, there was a hearing that kind of went another way, didn't you think?
Yeah, I was surprised. The Governmental Organization Committee, the Assembly and the Senate, had what they called an informational hearing, and I expected the legislature to come in there and ask some very tough questions, to be a little pushy, say, what are you doing? This happened as a result of the increase in fatalities at Santa Anita from December 26th to the end of March. 23 horses died in racing and training. That's not good. The legislators, however, were genuinely interested in learning about what the industry is doing to protect the horses and to protect the riders. And there was a really strong cross-section of people from the industry who spoke briefly because it was a 2-hour hearing with, I think, 17 people who had an opportunity to speak. So I was impressed that this was not, there was no agenda. They just wanted to learn. They said, what can we do to help? And they several of them said, we understand the importance of California horse racing, the tradition, both as a sport and as an industry.
And I think the lesson here is broadening it out to a national scope, what is being done in California. You can argue the bits and pieces of it, but moving forward with safety protocols to protect the riders and the horses, you have to do it. And whether, you can put your foot in the ground on certain issues, but you can't put your foot on the ground on change for the better. And that is, to me, what Stuart Janney was saying in the piece that was on HBO. He was saying, I've tried to get some of these people to compromise on things and move forward, and they just won't do it. And the result might be the demise of our industry. That was a pretty powerful statement. And so that was the one takeaway that I had from that piece.
Yeah, and the takeaway that I got from the legislative hearing was we want to make sure that the industry does not go away. So let's do what we can, you as an industry and we as legislators, to make sure that doesn't happen.
And the TV ratings haven't been spectacular by recent standards for the Triple Crown races, but the betting has been really good, and there have been eyeballs on it. In fact, Twitter exploded when Bodie Express ran around the racetrack without a rider, because people outside of racing don't see that very often, and they applaud the horse for trying, and again, that kind of shows that horses do like to run. They want to run with their herd. And so I thought that was an interesting development out of the Preakness. All these people were asking me questions about it, like, have you ever seen that happen before? So, the Derby disqualification, that happening in the Preakness, War of Wills, redemption, all of that has been a pretty decent spin on a difficult year for horse racing. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show, presented by the Match Series, starting back up June 1st at Penn National. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.